Hello everyone and welcome to the Efficiency for Access Partner Research Expo. We're very happy that you can make the time to attend the event today. We have one final session remaining, which is Power and Jobs Phase 2, how decentralised renewable energy technologies can unlock on-farm and off-farm employment. Before we get into the topic, we have a few bits of housekeeping. The format today is a presentation followed by an interactive discussion, and we're really keen to hear your thoughts and questions. During the presentations, if you could please keep your microphone on mute, that would be great. At the end of the presentation, you can unmute yourself to ask any questions or put them into the chat if you prefer. At the end of each presentation, you're very welcome to stay on for an extended chat with the presenters, or I was going to say, we'll move on to the next one. There isn't next one. This is the last one. Sorry about that. And finally, we're recording the sessions purely for note-taking purposes. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Abigail Kuria, who is from Efficiency for Access, and she's going to be our moderator for this session. Thank you, Abigail.
Thanks, Anita. Hello, everyone. I'm Abigail Kuria with CLASP, mainly working on the Efficiency for Access program. And together with my colleague, Hannibal Tesfahunegn of PowerForAll, we'll be presenting on the impact that decentralized renewable energy technologies has on green jobs. And given that this is the last presentation, we'll try and make it as painless as possible. Okay, next slide. Right, so a bit on the Efficiency for Access. So this is a global coalition of donors, program partners, investment network members that are, implementing projects in over 60 countries. And this research is part of the Low Energy Inclusive Appliances Program, or LEA, which is a flagship initiative of the Efficiency for Access. Okay, next slide. All right, so why did we decide to go ahead and do this project? So according to the International Labour Organization, nearly 40 million African youth are either unemployed or not in education. And we wanted to find out if DRE technologies can play a role in alleviating this issue. We also wanted to develop an approach to holistically measure direct and indirect jobs enabled through productive use of energy access. And just to form a bit of clarity, when we talk about decentralized renewable energy, this is energy that is generated independently from a central power grid, from sources such as small hydro, biomass, solar, and wind. And for this study, we mainly concentrated on a small subset of this, what we call productive use of energy, or PURE, which is technology such as solar-powered agro-processing or solar water pumps and such. Next slide. Right, so for this study, we mainly focused on 4 countries, which is India, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda. And we looked at 5 value chains, which is the rice and dairy value chain in India, the French bread value chain in Kenya, cassava in Nigeria, and dairy in Uganda. And the reason why we focused on the agriculture value chain is because the agri-food system is a very essential part of the economy for developing countries, and it employs a large proportion of the population. And some of the factors that we looked at when deciding which value chain we'll be looking at for each country is, what are the production level of the crop or the livestock product? How many smallholder farmers are engaged in the value chain? And what is the potential for DRE adoption in the value chain, as well as, what is the income earning potential for these crops to the value chain? In the next slide. All right, so as we're looking at the impact of DRE adoption on jobs, we classified jobs into direct and indirect jobs. And for the direct jobs, these are jobs created by the DRE technology itself. And here we're talking about like installation and maintenance technicians, a solar installer, a salesperson, and such. And for indirect jobs, we classified this into 2 categories, which is the upstream jobs and the downstream jobs. And for the upstream, we are talking about jobs associated with manufacturing or importing the product. And this is like a prototype builder or an R&D expert. And then for the downstream jobs, we are talking about mainly two categories, which is on-site farm jobs, which are jobs created to operate the machinery, like let's say a solar miller operator. And then we also have agricultural value chain jobs, which are jobs created due to increased productivity or efficiency from adoption of the DRE. And this is jobs maybe in the processing plants like loaders and unloaders, transportation jobs and such. And then I'll hand it over to my colleague Hannibal to present on the methodology.
All right, thanks, Abigail. Yeah, so as Abigail had mentioned earlier, one of kind of the main aim of this study is to develop a methodology on how to calculate each of the job categories. So in this slide, I'll take you through the formula or the approach that we used or that we developed to estimate the jobs created due to DRE technologies. So for direct jobs, basically the approach that we used is kind of multiplying implement factor by annual number of DRE products sold. So for implement factor, that data can be gathered from, for example, from PowerForAll's Power Job Census, where we collect kind of how many people are employed per unit of DRE equipment, and other organizations such as the Council for Energy and Environment in India also calculate implement factor. So that data can be collected for the different technologies and kind of multiplied by the DRE products sold, and that the market data on DRE products sold can be gathered from Google, from different market reports for the different DRE technologies. For the second category of jobs, which is indirect upstream jobs, so we use the same approach or the same formula. So it's basically indirect jobs implement factor multiplied by one number of DRE products sold. So the difference with direct jobs is that we are focusing on kind of how many indirect jobs are created per DRE equipment. So by indirect jobs, that can mean how many solar manufacturing or solar module manufacturing jobs are created per, let's say, per solar water pump. And we get this data from different reports on the status of renewable energy. So there are some reports, for example, in India, which showed how many solar manufacturing jobs are created per 1 megawatt power of solar energy generated. For the third category of jobs, which is indirect downstream jobs, we have two subcategories. So the first one is on-site farm jobs, and the way we estimated that is basically by asking end users and companies how many new employees are employed or required to operate the machinery, and we multiply that by the number of DRE machineries in the market. And for the second subcategory, which is the agricultural value chain jobs, where we look at how many additional workers are created, or how many jobs are created or improved per unit increase in agricultural production. So for example, if a farmer starts using solar water pump, and if they were not irrigating previously, they will notice an increase in yield. So that increase in yield can be up to 100% because they will be able to increase the number of production per year. And that increase in production per year will have an increase in the number of jobs created in the agricultural value chain. And there are some reports, especially what we call input-output model reports, which they show you per 1 unit increase in agricultural production, how many jobs are created. So we use this hybrid approach to calculate the impact of DRE technologies on employment. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for the next few slides, I will take you through some of the analysis that we have done and some of the key findings. So what we have learned is amongst the different DRE technologies that we have selected, solar water pump has a significant job opportunity, and there's a significant job opportunity in India and Kenya. So if we look at the chart on the left-hand side of this slide shows the number of implement created due to the use of solar water pump. So currently, according to our estimation, up to 6,000 jobs are created due to the use of solar water pump in India, with 4,500 of this implement created by the solar water pump companies themselves. So these are people who work as a salesperson or as a technician in the solar water pump sector, and the remaining close to 1,500 are employed by companies who manufacture the components needed for solar water pump. So that could be a solar module manufacturer or a metal manufacturer that produces the components for solar water pump. And we estimate that this figure can reach up to 78,000 by 2030. So you might notice here that there is a big jump from 6,000 to 78,000 within 8 years. And the main reason for that is in the next few years, we anticipate that most of the demand for solar water pump in India is going to come from non-irrigating farmers who were not irrigating previously. And when they start using solar water pump and when they start using irrigation, they will realize an increase in production and productivity, which will result in higher job figures. So as you can see on the 2030 chart, most of the increase in employment is going to come from the downstream indirect jobs. And then the main another reason for the increase in employment is the PM Kusum scheme in India, which has sort of catalyzed the solar market. And we expect, because of the PM Kusum scheme, the Indian solar water pump market has been growing almost 20% on a yearly basis, and we expect this trajectory to continue until 2030. Similarly, in Kenya, we project that up to 5,000 direct jobs can be created by 2030, and also additional 33,000 jobs can be supported due to increased productivity. Next slide, please. And as I was saying earlier, the type of jobs created would be different. And the second category of jobs that we are interested is the indirect jobs, or kind of the solar manufacturing sector jobs. And we believe that the DRE sector could support more job creation if countries strengthen their solar manufacturing sector. So if you compare all the 4 countries, India, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, India has the most advanced manufacturing sector. So most of the components for solar water pump are manufactured locally in India, which means most of the job creation will be captured within India itself. So only electronic components are imported from China to India. So most of the job creation will be captured in India. And due to this, the Indian solar water pump sector is expected to support up to 5,500 manufacturing jobs by the end of 2030. Nigeria has a growing manufacturing sector, and there are some private companies who have started assembling and manufacturing solar modules, but it's not as advanced as India. But with the growth of the demand for DRE products such as cassava graters or cassava millers, we expect that more manufacturing jobs will be created in Nigeria as well. On the other hand, Uganda and Kenya, they largely import completely built units or CBUs of solar water pumps. So there is very little assembly, in-house assembly or in-house manufacturing in both countries. So even if if the trend continues, even with the increase in demand for DRE products, there will be a few manufacturing jobs created in those countries. So those countries need to improve the policy regime, such as making the tariff regime more attractive for assembling and manufacturing locally, so that they can capture most of the job creation in-house. Next slide, please. We also looked at how the jobs created are going to benefit women. So for the 5 value chains that we have selected, as was shown by Abigail earlier, the women account a majority share of the labor force. So for example, in India's case, 70% of the India's dairy labor force are women, and they're responsible for animal care, milking, processing, and farming management. And that is true for all the value chains that we have analyzed. So basically, when you introduce DRE, it will have a significant impact on women. And some of the case studies that we have seen include, for example, the introduction of solar roti rolling in India, which has improved employment for women and also reduced the time needed to do solar roti rolling. According to our analysis, women who have replaced manual roti rolling with mechanized roti rolling, and that mechanized roti rolling can be a solar roti rolling, we're able to save up to 1,800 labor hours per year. And also women dairy farmers who use solar milking machinery in Uganda and India reported low incidence of back pain. So in addition to reducing time, those technologies improve the comfort of work for women and improve their health outcomes. Similarly, we have also seen that the introduction of DRE technologies have empowered entrepreneurship amongst women. But one thing that we need to be careful here is there is also kind of the downside impact where you introduce DRE technology and that can replace women workers. For example, in roti rolling case, when you introduce a roti rolling, mechanized roti rolling, that can replace women who are involved in manual roti rolling. In most cases, what we have learned is that those workers will transition into a different value chain. It could be chutney making or a different value chain within the dairy or rice value chain. But we need to ensure that that transition is smooth, and that the way to do that is providing them skilling and training so that they can easily transition into a different part of the agricultural value chain or even off-farm employment as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I mean, so far we have discussed about kind of the implement creation due to DRE technologies, but in the future there are major opportunities for increased employment as well. But where do those increased opportunities for increased employment lie? So the first thing is most of the DRE technologies currently in those countries are in nascent phase. So we basically classified the technology into 3 groups based on their level of adoption. So you have nascent, emerging, and ready to scale. So solar water pump in India and Kenya is a technology that is already at a scale up or ready to scale phase because the total sales amount is in hundreds of thousands in India's case and in 10,000 scale figures in Kenya's case. So it's already scaled up. So there is already big implement opportunity created there. But for other technologies such as the cassava grater or cassava miller in Nigeria, they are in nascent case. So we need to grow the market size and improve and kind of increase adoption of those technologies to create more employment. The second area of opportunity arises from brownfield deployments. So what we call by brownfield deployment is basically retrofitting diesel powered units into solar powered units. And that brownfield deployment is cheaper in some cases compared to purchasing a new solar powered equipment. And there is increased demand for brownfield deployment. So for example, in Nigeria's case, we have learned that many entrepreneurs who own diesel powered cassava graters are interested in retrofitting their diesel powered cassava grater into electric or solar powered cassava grater. And that can create a lot of employment because you need highly skilled technicians to retrofit a diesel powered unit into a solar powered unit, and that could be another opportunity for employment. But to achieve this employment opportunity, we also need to address the agricultural barriers that farmers face. So similar to the conversation before this session, which was on solar dryers, where farmers were complaining that the lack of market linkage has reduced demand for DRE equipment. We also face the same. We also understood from the different interviews that we have conducted that farmers face the same problem. So farmers indicate that due to lack of off-takers or due to lack of modern inputs such as seed or fertilizers, they are less interested in adopting modern agricultural, in adopting DRE equipment. So we also need to address this challenge to achieve increase in adoption of DRE technologies and thereby create more employment. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think I will hand it over to Abigail.
Thanks, Hannibal. And yeah, so given the findings that Hannibal has shared, what can private sector, public sector, and different development partners do to help enhance the impact of DRE technologies in creating employment? So the first thing that we found is that it's important to strengthen market-based interventions so as to boost demand for DRE equipment. So Hannibal also mentioned this, the PM Kusum scheme in India that had to catalyze the solar water pump market. And how they did this is by addressing a critical issue to the adoption of these technologies, which was the high initial cost of solar water pumps, by providing subsidies. And much as other markets may not have the fiscal capabilities to provide this kind of subsidies, they can do other interventions, like possibly funding microfinance institutions to help with financing this appliances that are found to be a bit expensive for many customers. Another important thing is we need to improve coordination between energy and agriculture stakeholders. And we found in our research that countries such as Ethiopia and Uganda have already started implementing renewable energy in their agriculture development programs. So with even Uganda taking it a step further and putting in place responsible parties that have KPIs to report on, renewable energy targets. And this sends out a positive signal to, businesses that want to invest in this sector. And then we also found that it's important to strengthen relevant reskilling and upskilling programs, because as this DRE sector creates jobs, the local populations and youth need to be able to take these jobs up. And this requires concerted efforts between governments, private sector, education institutions, as well as development partners. In our research, we found that what we call technical and vocational education and training institutions that tend to be widespread across the country are very well placed to provide this training. But many of these TVETs are facing challenges such as inadequately trained staff, and out-of-date curricula, and high tuition costs. So we need to support them to be able to, provide these trainings. We also need to be able to support the transition from manual laborers on the farm to other jobs down the value chain as we adopt these DRE technologies. So we've come to the end of our presentation. Happy to take any questions, and just to mention that we haven't yet published this report. It's currently in the final stages of the publication process, but we are planning to publish it in early August, and we'll share the report with this group and the wider Efficiency for Access team. Yeah, so see a few questions come in the chat. Okay, so we have a question from Jackie. How feasible and accurate would applying this methodology to other value chains be? And what are the main challenges or barriers that we encountered using this methodology? Hannibal, let's take that on.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the question. So we have designed the methodology to be as value chain and technology agnostic as much as possible. So the methodology can be applied for the different DRE technologies within the agricultural sector or within the different agricultural value chains. So kind of the different elements of the methodology can be applied for the different technologies. In terms of challenge, the main challenge that we faced is lack of data. So basically, to estimate the jobs, you need two types of data. The first one is the market data, basically how many products are sold per year, and that is for the different DRE technologies, whether it's solar water pump or solar miller or solar grater. And the second element of data that you need is the implement factor, which is how many people are employed per unit of DRE technology. So in some cases, for example, in India's and Kenya's solar water pump, because there is already robust data on the market data for solar water pump in both countries, and also there is kind of data on employment factor, we were able to calculate how many jobs were created. But for other value chains and for other technologies, it was a bit difficult because first, some of those technologies are nascent, so there is very little data collection in terms of how many products are sold per year, and also how many employees are created per unit of equipment. So lack of data is the major challenge. But I think, looking forward, I think it will become easier in the future, because as the market grows, as most of those technologies become are kind of scaling up, we will see. We expect to see a lot of data collection on the market size, and also more report on or more research on kind of how many people are employed per unit of equipment.
Thanks, Hannibal. And I see Russell has sent in a question on, do we anticipate increased battery manufacturing for solar products or PV manufacturing in Africa? Maybe I can take a stab at this, and Hannibal, if you have anything to add, feel free. So from our findings, we found that when it comes to, component manufacturing in Africa, there are a lot of punitive policies when it comes to taxes, when it comes to import duties. There just seems to be a lot of unfavorable policies, which makes it just easier for companies to manufacture outside of the country. So we do not see this possibly happening in the near future, but it's something that we can keep our eye out for to see in case policies change. Hannibal, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, nothing major. I think there is some kind of growing movement for in-house manufacturing. I mean, I was mentioning the example of Nigeria, so there are a couple of companies who have already set up shop in Nigeria to produce to manufacture solar modules. So I think I mean, yeah, as Abigail said, we need to improve the policy regime, but I mean, in the future, there's definitely going to be more manufacturing in the continent.
Right, and I see we are almost at time.
I have one question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
It was about the market potential of job creation, I think. And you showed some figures about solar water's potential in job creation. And you mentioned that women, specifically in India, would have more job opportunities coming up. So I wondered, in the formula, how did you manage for maybe cultural preferences and perceptions among women that they would not want to engage in such employment? Like any of other factors that could influence job market, were those considered in the formula?
Yeah. So I mean, so the insight regarding women was mostly gathered from kind of anecdotal evidence that we gathered with the interviews and focus group discussions that we have conducted. So the formula does not necessarily account for cultural preferences and other factors, but we supplemented that information with interviews and discussions with companies and end users.
And
Thank
lastly, it's Leah. Lastly, we had a question from Jackie on if we could clarify if the methodology would count direct to include designing, research, and development of the appliances, or just at the manufacturing level. So for us, the research and development also fell into the manufacturing side of things, and this we put in the indirect upstream jobs, and these were included, yes, in our methodology. Hannibal, anything to add?
Yeah, nothing to add.
Right. Well, thanks all for joining. Yeah, this has been a great session, and I will share our contacts after this together with the slides and the report once it's published. Yeah, wish you all a good rest of your day.